by the Skoda Superb. Space and luxury in perfect harmony.
Tonight, an actor who grew up as a singer before pursuing a life on the screen and stage, and in a career spanning over 50 years, he has worked with the likes of Gene Kelly, Barbra Streisand, Benjamin Britten and John Barry. And it was Andrew Lloyd Webber who gave the man who joins me the role of the first ever Phantom of the Opera in the West End, and later on Broadway. If you still haven't got it, the show that made my guest a household name, playing the hapless and accident-prone Frank Spencer in the hit 70s comedy series, was, of course, Some Mothers Do Have 'Em. He turns 70 next year, and will celebrate that milestone while performing in his current role in the West End as the Wizard in The Wizard of Oz, which he plays until February the 5th. Yes, tonight I welcome Michael Crawford. Michael, great news you're extending in The Wizard of Oz, but 6.5 years ago you could have said we would never see you back on stage again.
I suppose so. Yes. You actually don't think about it when it happens. I was doing Woman in White, and I caught what I thought was the flu, and each day I would be fine till about 4 o'clock, and then 4 o'clock when I was due to go in, I'd suddenly feel very, very tired. So I went for all sorts of examinations then at hospitals, and including brain scans, etc.
Did you have a brain?
They found it in the end. It was a tough search, but it was then sort of thought that I had ME. And I mean, I still don't know what it means really, because the doctors can't explain it. There is no explanation. There is no known cure that you could just take tablets and you feel okay. And so I got various pieces of advice, and including from Michael Winner, who said to me, I've got some herbal things, my dear. He said, don't worry about it. He said, take these. He said, and I ordered them, and I got them, and I took them, and I felt okay. It was no great change, but he said, all right, well, you've got to be taking those for the rest of your life now, my dear. I thought, I'm not, that I don't want to do.
So are you cured?
Well, I went off. I decided I couldn't work, so they obviously let me go, and I went off to New Zealand. I don't know why I chose New Zealand. I've been there before. I loved it. It was very peaceful. I wanted to sail, and it was the most beautiful country that I'd been to, and it was very much 1953. It was slower in pace, and I thought that would suit me at the moment. And off I went. I bought a house, I got some land, and I built an orchard and a garden and planted 3,000 plants and trees, and got a boat, and I sailed and fished, and slowly I started to feel better. The stress was taken out of my life, because it is stressful. Every day you go in, it's a new audience.
And I'm not suggesting for 1 second that you did, but you are known for your hard work. How did you feel inside in that you were beaten? You were almost, I know you weren't quitting, but you were almost copping out because you couldn't carry on. That someone with your work ethic, that must have hurt.
It did, but strangely, if someone if something happens to someone, if something tragic happens to someone, you have to accept it. I mean, if you break your arm, you've broken your arm. I've got to go into plaster. How can I work? When I did Billy in 1971, I broke my wrist while we were up in Manchester, and we just put it in plaster, and I went back on that night, because you just deal with stuff and people all over the...
I'm glad you say that, because I've got a list here. I think if I'm right, you once went on stage with a hernia during Phantom of the Opera and sedated yourself, sort of self-medicated with cups of coffee. You passed out just before Barnum because you hadn't eaten for 3 days, but you still went on stage. You nearly killed yourself in the fat suit in Women in White, and you broke your hip in EFX. You suffer for your art, Michael Crawford.
Well, I didn't. Yes, I didn't realise though that you had the list that.
I'm not a fully trained doctor.
Oh. Well, I can offer no defence at the moment.
Why do you throw yourself into it so wholeheartedly? What does it give you? And it's you love, what I get is you love the theatre, don't you?
I do. I do. I adore the theatre. It's a great feeling of being alive in front of an audience, and it always gave me the greatest joy going as a child when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to go to the theatre and come to the Palladium and see people like Danny Kaye. They're things you never forget as long as you live.
No broken bones in Wizard. So far.
No, so touch wood.
Shall we do it now? And as we thump wood, could you perhaps lead us into your first choice? You worked, I think, as your second job ever was with Benjamin Britten.
It was.
And we're going to have some Britten if you'd introduce this now.
Well, yes, I auditioned for Benjamin Britten for Let's Make an Opera, and I had a sweet voice, but it wasn't that good. There was a boy called Robin Fairhurst who was excellent, and there was another boy called David Hemmings, who you may remember, and he got the lead, and I did second nights, and he was the kindest and most generous of men. He was so good to all of us and really encouraged the beginning of my career. And then I did Noise Flood for him, and he changed the music. I've got the score where my voice started to slide, and he took it from a boy soprano down to wherever I was lingering for those few weeks. And for the world premiere, as he called it, Noise Flood, we opened at Orford Church in Suffolk, and it was a very, very special time in my life.
First of Michael Crawford's choices on today's Classic FM interview. It was Lord Jesus Think on Me from Noise Flood by Benjamin Britten. The school children from Salisbury and Chester, City of London Sinfonia and Endymion Ensemble, all conducted by Richard Hickox. Michael, you had a peripatetic childhood. You were between Wiltshire and Sheerness, and a bit older you go to Dulwich in London. How comfortable was it being on the move that much?
I think I've been on the move now that's extraordinary, because I was thinking about that yesterday, that I have been, in a way, on the move all my life, and I'm quite comfortable being on the move. I think home is where your head is. If you're touring for a year, which we do concert tours across America, wherever you go, you have to find something. You have to find something interesting and wonderful. You just do. If you go for a walk, you find characters, you meet characters, and to have the opportunity to do this, to be afforded this luxury that if we're successful in any way, is part of a great adventure, as far as I can see, and I still love doing it.
And coming back to your childhood, when did you realise that you might have some form of gift to perform or to entertain?
Well, when it was proven I couldn't do anything else.
So fell back on it.
Well, I was at school. I was always the school clown. I wasn't very good with discipline. I loved having fun. I loved sport. I absolutely adored it. And wasn't particularly great at it, but was usually made sports captain because of my enthusiasm. And I'd be goalkeeper in soccer, so that I would, whether it was muddy or not, I'd dive all over the place just to get covered in mud so I could go home and show my grandfather and say, what a poor boy, it was really quite a match, and I'd let in 12 or something. And then when we ran the school relay, I put myself in the relay team. I wasn't really that good a runner, but I was determined to win something, because I'd never won anything but a bow and arrow for the high jump, which with the help of the headmaster's shoe, and I was running the fourth leg of the 100 meters relay, and the first three were like lightning. They were so good in our house, Riley House it was, against Grenville House, and Riley House came through on the first leg and the second leg, and we had a ferocious lead, and the third leg the guy started to slow down, and I'm screaming at him, come on, screaming. When he hands over the baton to me, I've got a 10-yard lead, and within 20 yards I'd been overtaken, and I'm trying to trip the guy in front of me, which nearly led to expulsion. And my mother was so embarrassed she'd left before I even finished.
Happy school days, I
Oh
sense.
Yes, they couldn't wait to see the back of me.
And your home life, how did you get on with your stepfather?
Not that well. No, I had my mother remarried when I was 4, and I don't know, it just wasn't, he wasn't very kind to my mother, and it's very hard to understand that and comprehend what's going on in a house, except that there's shouting, and I knew my mother was so kind.
And we won't stay on it too long, Michael, but the extraordinary circumstances of your real dad.
I grew up thinking, when I was 4 or 5, that my father had been killed in the war. He was a pilot, and in fact it wasn't until I was about 13 that I discovered he was killed in 1940, the end of 1940, and I was born in 1942, so I've had a very long pregnancy. But I didn't understand all those things, and I certainly wasn't good at maths, as you've heard. So it was then revealed to me by my grandmother that I was in fact illegitimate, and that was quite a shock at 14 to come. And so I didn't in fact find out who I always looked upon my mother's husband as my father, even though he was killed way before he could have been my father. This was a romanticized picture that I had of my father as I would want him to be, and I always heard how much in love they were and how beautiful the relationship was, and I guess that has always stayed in my head. So I still call him my father. So I am a terrible old romantic, yes.
Michael, time for your second musical selection. Pearl Fishers, you just love the magic of it?
Bizet wrote the most beautiful harmonies for this piece, and I just have always wanted and always longed to sing it, but I never did. And after hearing, you'll understand why.